A chest filled with borrowed gold brings no joy. They say value is a simple count, coin, coin, coin. But listen, this is a riddle dressed in metal. What you own when you cannot keep time belongs to no one. Some say the chest itself was carved from the trunk of an ancient hourglass. It hummed like a pocket watch with a missing hand. The town called it beautiful, and the people called it fortune, yet a hush fell when the chest was opened. Shadows leaned in with the curiosity of creditors. The first coin shone like a sunlit second. The second coin sang like a false promise. The first lesson arrives like a paradox. Borrowed gold glitters now, but borrows from tomorrow. Across the market square, two figures watched the chest. One was called the borrower, a man whose thirst for more had been sharpened by small successes, whose fingers always reached before his heart decided. He wore clever smiles like jewelry. The other was the watcher, an old clockmaker who kept his wisdom in the slow, steady turn of gears and in a locket that ticked day and night. The borrower touched the coins and felt possibility. The watcher listened to the silence between ticks. "Take it," the city murmured. "It could lift you above want." The air tasted like coin metal and time. They spoke in the hush between vendors. The borrower asked for enough to double his craft, to trade up to a new life measured in faster horses and louder praise. The chest answered, not with sound but with conditions. "You may carry the gold, but I keep the hours you spends." No contract was signed on parchment. It was made with nods and the way the borrower's eyes flitted to the clock tower. Some say the chest chooses those willing to trade time for shine. The watcher tapped his watch, as if to show how often a life is spent on tiny transactions that pretend to be upgrades. With the chest at his feet, the borrower felt invincible for a week. He bought a new sign, spices he had never tasted, and hired singers for his shop. Each night, coins clinked like laughter. Yet when morning came, his hands were quick and his sleep was thin. He dreamed in ledgers and woke to the feeling of being watched by a clock that had been owed time. The watcher watched from his window, his locket truthfully ticking away. The lesson of this chapter is a quiet one. Borrowed wealth feeds the present, but starves the future. The night was soft and the market sang, but somewhere a single gear began to skip. Weeks became a weave of transactions. The borrower paid servants with coins stamped from borrowed light. He paid smiles with short-lived theater. Each coin spent carried a thread back to the chest, a promise that tomorrow's hours would be reduced. The chest did not scream. It accrued interest in small acts, a missed supper, a hurried letter, an hour spent polishing rather than planning. The watcher wound clocks for neighbors and spoke softly of margins, not of numbers alone, but of attention. "Interest is not only monies," he said, "it's the time it consumes." The ledger grew thick, not with profits alone, but with obligations littered like shadows across the borrower's days. He found himself pleasing creditors who were not men, but expectations. The expectation to rise earlier, to answer faster, to expand louder. In the mirror, his eyes looked different. Reflections weighed more. "You are being serviced," a voice hissed from the chest's rim, which could have been wind. The watcher placed a coin on his workbench, then watched it slowly wear a notch, as if even currency could show fatigue when bought on borrowed time. Tension found its voice in small fractures. A quarrel with a partner about late hours, missed birthdays logged as excuses, a child asking why a father was always elsewhere. Greed and convenience had seemed friends, but they were thieves in the same robe. The borrower grew tired of patching a life that frayed at the seams. The watcher, in the cool smell of oil and brass, reminded him that time hoarded poorly returns as regret. The town's clocks began to chime with different rhythms, some racing, some slowing, like a chorus of admonitions. One rain-soaked evening, the watcher visited the borrower's doorway. He did not scold like thunder, he spoke like a bell. Gold glittering in borrowed light buries the self in constants you cannot control. You will find your days leased to others. The borrower, proud and impatient, smiled and closed the door. Pride is hot and quick, consequences are patient. The watcher left the locket with a quiet hum, a token not of wealth, but of measurement. The coin of habit was now theirs to count. Foreshadowed within this exchange was a darker accounting. Debts of time compound into seasons of loss. Soon the borrower awoke to a different world. Evenings claimed by creditors, mornings reduced to sprints. The chest's coins began to feel like stones in a coat. He moved faster, but remained in place. Interest had become a shadow that lengthened into nights. The watch on the watcher's neck kept time with the inevitable, not out of cruelty, but because clocks are honest. The borrower discovered that speed without direction only deepens distance from meaning. He tried to outwork the shadow, paying late, borrowing more to answer demands. The trap is elegant. Quick fixes temporarily erase panic while subtly thickening chains. Days folded into promises to self that never held. The borrower pledged tomorrows for today's applause. He missed the slow crafts of life, a real conversation, a quiet morning, the ritual of making plans with care. His hands were full, but his ledger showed an empty future. The watcher, in his quiet shop, began to mend not broken watches, but broken attention. Neighbors asked for help reclaiming evenings. A small revolution began silently, to buy back time by selling off possessions that had been bought by the hour. There was a moment where the borrower climbed a ladder of small victories. Sales peaked, compliments multiplied, the chest's glow warmed his nights. Pride became scaffolding. The higher he built, the further the fall when the ledger demanded hours he no longer had. One evening, the chest hummed with a note the borrower hadn't heard. "We are due." He rushed to meet the demand and found that time cannot be paid in coins alone. The city clock rang in 12 clear tones, and with each chime, a memory slid away like sand in a thin palm. In the wake of loss, the borrower faced a narrow corridor with 2 doors, one gilded and tempting, offering more borrowed gold to patch the holes, the other plain and narrow, promising slower repair and fewer borrowed hours. It is told in whispers that the borrower slept through the gilded knock and woke to find his life further tangled. Yet within the plain doorway, he found neighbors who had sold trinkets and returned to long dinners, craftsmen who took 2 hours to make one perfect piece. Here, in disorder and small courage, something like repair could begin. The watcher offered not coins, but a key engraved with the locket's steady hand. The borrower began to sell what glittered most. He returned the singers, traded showy wares for honest tools, and placed the chest beside a window where light could judge it. With each sale, hours resurfaced like breath after diving. Not all was neat. Some bargains had to be made hard and fast, and some relationships showed their true price. But as he traded borrowed gold for regained mornings, he discovered a simpler currency: time spent in line with values. The watcher nodded, not with victory, but with the relief of a clock that has been wound rightly. He learned to protect small rituals, a morning with the child, an evening set aside for thought, a weekly hour to plan rather than react. These rituals acted like interest in reverse, compounding calm rather than compounding anxiety. The chest remained by the window, its lid closed, as if waiting to test him. Each ritual was a stitch, reweaving the life he had unpicked. Some say rituals are tiny alarms against the seduction of borrowed shine. Indeed, they became his compass in nights when the old cravings whispered. Neighbors followed in small, courageous steps. The town found a rhythm not measured by accumulation, but by shared time. Markets that closed early on some nights, craftsmen offering lessons in exchange for help, a public clock reset to slow its anxieties. The watcher led a small ceremony where coins were placed into a communal jar with hour marks beside them, a pact to spend fewer hours buying status and more on life. The borrower, once a portrait of haste, now sat quietly at a table and listened. Relief was not dramatic, it was steady, like the return of a tide. In the last light, the borrower came to the chest and placed his hand upon it. He spoke aloud, not to anyone but to the ledger of his days. No more taking tomorrow to make today loud. He closed the lid and fastened it with the watcher's key, not as a prison, but as a promise. The chest's glow dwindled into the window like a spent bell, and the watcher's locket chimed once, perfectly on time. The city's clocks resumed a steady chorus. The story bends here into its lesson. Money borrowed at the cost of time becomes an illusion of wealth. True wealth, like a well-tended clock, keeps steady rhythms that buy you mornings, not noise. If you carry anything away from this parable, that a chest filled with borrowed gold brings no joy, carry this practice. Measure what you trade for tomorrow. Subscribe to join a community that chooses time well. Share this story if it touched you, and tell us in the comments, what small ritual will you protect starting tomorrow?